Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING. Get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator exclusively on DRF Bets.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Past the Wire TV. I am fortunate enough today to be joined by Dawn Lupul. Dawn is a former very successful and, in my opinion, very good paddock analyst for Woodbine Racetrack. She has stopped doing that, and interestingly enough, is betting on the horses most of the time, as far as I know, and we'll find out a little bit more about that. But first, Dawn, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure, really. It's nice. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think you and I will cover some territory that people are very curious about and didn't know where to go to find out this kind of info.
I agree with that. I think most people don't have any idea about some of the stuff that we're going to be, talk about it and get into. But before we do that, how did you first get involved in horse racing?
Lifelong thing. It was just, my dad's a chemical engineer, white collar worker by trade, but for some reason he always wanted to get into the racing side of things. So it was with standardbred horses. When I was 6, I grew up in Edmonton, but when I was 6 years old, we moved to a little 20-acre farm just east of Edmonton, and my dad got his horses, and I always wanted horses. I had the riding horses, and he had the standardbred horses. So it was a lifelong thing. I mean, my brother and I used to chase each other around the racetrack, picking up tickets and just being little terrors there. It's been my whole life. I've gone back and forth. I used to help my dad with the horses all the time. Used to drive them around. Then I did other things. I went to university. I was in the restaurant business for a while, and always came back to the horses. And then started doing the broadcasting, which is where people would know me from. I used to go to Northlands Park in Edmonton all the time, the now defunct Northlands Park. And I walked by the guy who was doing the on-air stuff one day, and I said, "You never have any women on here. What's wrong with you? Why don't you have women on here?" And so he said, "Okay, you come on and pick some winners." So I did. I went on his show, and then I felt kind of bad about it. But the next year, Northlands asked if I wanted to do the job full time. So I kind of replaced him. Yeah, that was 1995. So I was in the broadcasting side of things for a long time. My background was harness, but then I was always betting thoroughbreds all along the way. Switched over, and my biggest compliment came when people thought it was weird that I wouldn't know anything about harness racing. That's when I knew that I had made the transition. Full transition, but I'm definitely well versed in both breeds. Obviously, I did the broadcasting thing, and then I went on my own and trained horses for. That was my sole income. Standardbreds I was training, breeding, owning for 10 years. That's how I made a living. So I know every aspect of this business. I've been an owner, a breeder, I've been a bettor, I've been a morning line odds maker, I've been on air, I've been in the paddock, I've done it all, and both breeds too. Yeah. So
that's fascinating. That really is. And I never knew the training part about you and that part about your background. Your broadcasting career I watched for a long time, and I always thought you were very, very good and had a very sharp opinion.
Thank you.
Interesting thing about me that might or might not surprise you. I think I know quite a bit about thoroughbreds and that side of the game. I couldn't tell you, if you asked me right now to save my life, how fast standardbreds run a mile. I know absolutely nothing. I've been to the trotting racetracks maybe 3 or 4 times in my life, never took to it. I think the only horse that I ever bet at a standardbred track was at Saratoga's harness track one year when I was a little kid, and the horse broke stride. Didn't even, make the course, broke stride. I'm like, well, what do you mean he's not allowed to run like that? I don't understand. And I
That's
just
it.
never got into it. No, absolutely nothing about it.
You know, a lot of really good professional thoroughbred bettors were originally harness bettors because they
Right.
brought that understanding of trips with
Mhm.
them, where, in harness racing, when you lose ground on the turns, it's a big thing. Trips in
Right.
harness racing, you suck along in the 2-hole and you wiggle out late, you go on to win. So they brought that knowledge of trip handicapping with them, and it translated really well to thoroughbreds. And everything that I've done has just gone into helping what I do now, including training and owning, because obviously that's why I was respected as a paddock analyst, because I really do understand horse body language. So
Right.
that all went into it as well. But yeah, harness racing is different. Obviously, like thoroughbred racing is a little bit more dynamic because you have different surfaces. You get turf, you get dirt, synthetic, whatever, different distances, everything, right? So there are more just variables in it that can make it a little bit more complicated, and thus makes the payoffs bigger. Harness racing, it's a mile. It's, you get half-mile tracks, you get mile tracks. It's a little bit different there, but
Right.
it's a little bit more clear cut, a lot more favorites.
I apologize for that beeping sound. That's my
Okay.
Mac, and I have never been able to figure out how to stop it from doing that. I've turned off every notification button that there is on this thing 101 times, and whenever I'm on a show, it just always happens, and I can't
All
stop
good.
it. So I don't
No
know.
worries.
I
No worries.
apologize. I apologize for that. I've tried. I've just never had the patience to call Apple and stay on the phone with them and have them fix it. But eventually, I'm going to have to. Let me throw this out at you.
Hmm.
How do you define a professional gambler?
Well, that's your income. I mean, there's no other source of income. That's
I
professional
agree.
gambler, is if you're not winning, you're not eating. That's basically, you're not paying your rent. You're not, yeah, that's
See,
professional.
that's how I define it as well.
Yeah.
There are a lot of definitions out there. And when I refer back to my days as being a professional gambler, that was my basic and sole primary, whatever you want to call it. It was my only income. If I didn't win, I
Yeah.
didn't eat, basically.
Yeah.
So it wasn't uh, people who say bet 100,000 a year and they look to grind out a small ROI. You know what I mean? And that would not have worked for me. You know you know what I mean? I had to
Yeah.
win enough to sustain my lifestyle and what I wanted to be able to do with my life for many years. And it was, for me, fortunately, I don't have to do it today, and I don't really do it today because I think it's a lot harder today than it was 10 years ago and 20
Yeah.
years ago for a number of different reasons.
For sure.
But it's always been extremely difficult. There's a very small percentage of people that do it. Of the, I hear varies. I hear 1%, 2%. I always thought it was closer to maybe 4 or 5% of the players that do it. That's just my opinion. I don't think there's any way to determine what that statistic is. But what is your thought on that? How many, and not necessarily professional, but how many, what's the percent you think of people that actually beat the game and come out ahead?
I think it could be, around 5%. I don't think it would be anywhere more than that. And
Right.
that may be a little bit generous, but yeah, because it is more difficult. In a lot of ways, it kind of goes both ways, because there's many more options now, right? Like, you don't
Right.
have to sit there. If you're a Naira player, you don't have to sit there and suffer through an aqueduct winter day with 5 or 6 horse fields. You can
Right.
instantly switch on to something else. And now you can bet Australia, you can bet Hong Kong. The menu is a lot broader, but the ability to get the bread and butter kind of prices, where horses were legitimate horses and you get 5 to 2, 3 to 1 on them. Well, now you're getting 4 to 5, right?
Right.
Now you're getting 3 to 5. So the game has changed in a lot of different ways. Yeah, I get it. Like, people think that this is, oh yeah, you just sit there and you bet horses and it's what a great way to make a living. It's not easy. It's a grind. You have to play. If you're not playing, you're not making money. You have to have a substantial enough bankroll, because it's not about building the bankroll. If you lose the bankroll, you're done.
Correct.
And then they don't understand that out of that bankroll, you have to pay your expenses. So you're constantly taking out of the bankroll, right, to support your life. Like, it's not just sitting there untouched, it's getting used because you got rent to pay, you
Exactly.
got mortgage to pay, you got to buy food. So
Exactly.
it's got to be increasing all the time. Yeah, it is not easy. And I would challenge anybody to try it. Anybody can get lucky and hit like a score. Try
Right.
to do that day in, day out, year after
No,
year.
listen, I completely understand because I did it for many years.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you get it.
I think it was, it was an accomplishment. I really do. I know how hard it was. And I mean, and you can tell me if it's the same for you. It was I mean, a tremendous amount of sacrifices on a personal level. My personal life was basically non-existent. I could never get into a normal dating relationship because Friday night and Saturday night were big study nights for me. They weren't nights. I had the liberty to go out and hang out and date and do stuff like that because I had to study. On Saturdays and Sundays, those were major days for me. I couldn't miss the possible opportunity of making that score that might cover my month or my quarter or my meet, because the day you step away could be the day that one of the kind of plays that you make click. And if you're depending on living and eating and keeping that bankroll intact and growing it, you really you quickly learn to understand that you can't afford to miss those opportunities. And on even days that I wouldn't bet, because I was very disciplined, once I realized that I was playing for keeps, so to speak, I became a very disciplined player, and I would only make bets that I felt good about, and I would try and really make them count and say, okay, my philosophy was I may cash less tickets, but I'm going to win more money and make it count when I'm right, and I'm going to erase all the losses. And that was pretty much my philosophy. And, even on a day I wouldn't bet, and I could be sitting at the racetrack with a pocket full of money, 20, 30, $40,000, and I might not make a bet, which is hard for a quote gambler to do. But when you're a professional, I looked at it completely different. But even if I wasn't betting, Dawn, and tell me if you do this as well, I was still taking notes. I was watching all the races. I was paying attention to everything that went on and looking for something that might help me in a future race when I am going to make a bet. Is that your similar approach?
Yeah, 100%. It's all reconnaissance, right? I mean, that's
Right.
where you're building your future. Is everything that happens now, and then going back after and even watching replays again. To me, watching replays is one of the probably most important things.
I agree.
And head-on replays, doing the extra work, right? The things that people don't do, like the guys who the race is over, they cash, they don't cash, they're flipped and they're looking at the next races. They don't even look at the replay. They have no idea what happened other than they either won or they lost, right? But yeah, it's important. And then you notice, if there happens to be a track bias. I'm not the biggest track bias person in the world by any stretch of the imagination.
I agree. I think there's a lot of false biases out there. People just are quick to label a track biased when it's not. When you catch a true one, I always feel you can capitalize off it. But 90% of the ones they cite are not really true biases. When the best horse wins or the lone speed wins, it doesn't mean the track is favoring speed.
Yeah, that's the prevailing bias at almost every track in North America is lone speed. I mean, and you get 3 or 4 8 to 5 or 6 to 5 or 3 to 5 horses win and going wire to wire, but speed bias. It's like, well, no, if you get a couple 20 to 1 shots, doing something that normally doesn't happen, then maybe you think, okay, yeah, there could be something going on.
Right, exactly. And, I always define it by, a true speed bias will make a horse on the lead win that would not have won on an honest track. And, a closer's bias will get a closer up on a track, on a fair track where he might not have gotten up, Yeah,
you got to watch for weather. Weather is the big thing. Like weather can definitely skew a track one way or the other. So
100%.
It's always important to look that way. Even wind, wind.
Another thing that I do when I watch replays, and I'm curious if you do this as well, and if it affects you the same way as it does me, is I like to watch a replay the night or the next day after I had a bet. I find a lot of times when I watch it very close to the race, or watch it back right away, or after I won or lost, my emotion or adrenaline or excitement or enthusiasm skews my looking at it a little bit, and in both ways. Sometimes makes me see things, makes things look better than they were, or worse, because you've got a vested interest. But when I step back and watch it a day or two later,
Yeah.
I get a more objective feel for it. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, it's way more productive too. I like to wait until the charts are out for all the races and the speed figures are out. And then when I go sit and watch a replay, I know exactly who was first, second, third, fourth. I know if the odds-on favorite ran up the track. So I'm watching specific things. Why did the favorite finish so far back? Did something subtle happen that now that horse, next time he's not 4-5, now he's 2-1 or 5-2, and he's a legit horse who just got screwed for some reason, right? So I'm watching it with that in mind. Again, you can see if there's track biases, you can get a flow because you're looking at multiple results charts at the same time. So you're starting to notice, you pick things out much quicker than you would normally. So yeah, definitely watching it well after the fact, when you've got the numerical information that can go with the visual information at the same time, you marry those two, and that's an edge right there.
Right.
That's
I
you need
agree.
an edge.
It's all about finding an edge. I mean, that's always how I've approached it, or at least early on in my career. Let me ask you this: how do your friends and the people you interact with outside of horse racing respond or look at what you do?
I think so. A lot of them think I'm nuts. Luckily for me, this has been in various capacities. This has been my life for so long. I mean, when I owned a full barn of horses, I didn't have owners. Like, I didn't have sponsors. I owned everything that I raced. And there was at one time I had 25, 30 horses in my name, because I had broodmares, I had babies, I had racing stock, I had yearlings, I had everything. And then you have no life. Like, there was no such thing as vacation. That's like 365, 24/7. Those horses, they're there. And you can't pay too many people to help you out, because that's all on the bottom line. So I get like that, the whole not having a life. I didn't have a life for a long time as it was. So that was never really a big thing. Yeah, a lot of people think I'm kind of crazy because they do get what the time commitment is, and you can work an 80-hour week and lose money. I mean, you can. It happens all the time, right? You finish the week on a negative note, like the bankroll shrunk, it didn't grow. So and that can play with your mind then, because now it's a psychological thing, and when you're on a roll, you just seem to be making better decisions. When things go a little south, you lose a couple real tight photos, you get a bad ride, your jockey falls off at the gate. Those things seem to all of a sudden happen in like 3s and 4s. And it does stuff to your mind. Like, it honestly can make you think. You start, like for me, I start second guessing, and that's death.
I agree.
That's death. Yeah.
One of the most difficult things for me to master, okay? And it's still true to this day, even though, I don't play professionally anymore. Now I pretty much play to make scores. I play to make a couple of big scores throughout the year, and that'll bring me into the black, and the more the better. But it's not like my life is not going to change, right? It's not like I'm not going to eat if I don't win, but I still play very aggressively that way. But one of the most difficult things for me to master, and I do think I've done it, because I don't fall into this trap, but it's always hard, is not to chase money. Like, when you lose or your bankroll takes a big hit, and you're like, wow, I was sitting over here and now I'm over here, and you go look to bet something that you might not normally have done. And it's your nature to want to do it. And like, well, I could just unload here, or I could bet this sequence or that sequence and get my money back, and it's so tempting. It's so tempting. Is that, I mean, do you fight with that as well? I mean, because to me, that's my battle, and I don't do it. I'll force myself not to do it, but it's still to this day a battle.
Yeah, again, I think, there's certain common traits among successful professional gamblers, and being extremely disciplined and patient has to be one of them. And I was fortunate because, the way that I was in the business for so long, like I can sit there and handicap and put the work in. I can sit days and not make a bet. Like if
Right.
and it
I
doesn't
agree.
bother me, I don't start to get racing betting rabies. Like I gotta bet something. Yeah, I can sit and just wait and wait and wait. And that's been a huge part of my game. So that was in me before. I think if you don't have that in you, you need to develop it because you can blow your bankroll. Like you start chasing, and that's when the whole
Everything
problems
unravels, right?
start. It
You're right.
does.
You're in
It
trouble,
does.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's funny. I'm active on social media because of Past the Wire, but prior to that, I was the last person you'd ever think would be on social media. And when I was playing professionally, people used to say, not the nicest things about me. They would say, "Oh, John's a really cold guy. He doesn't talk to anybody at the racetrack." I used to sit at the same table. I used to go to the racetrack with my dad, and we would sit at the same table at Calder or Gulfstream every day. Before that, in New York, Saratoga, Belmont, wherever ever it was, but this was largely in Florida. I would say in the '90s. Okay, and my dad was a very sociable guy, and liked to talk to everybody. And we would argue all the time, say, don't invite anybody over to the table. I don't want anybody sitting at the table. Because the same thing I would get is, who do you like? You're a good
Yeah.
handicapper. You like it. Who do you like? I don't like anybody this race. Well, who would you bet if you were going to bet? I'm like, I don't want to hear that noise. I don't want to
No.
talk to you. I don't mean to be rude, but I'm here for business, not to socialize. And my dad and I would have the funniest arguments, and just in a loving way. Of course, he was my dad, but I would say, please don't invite anybody over to the table today, because we would have a big table on the end. They used to give it to me for nothing back then. It was very different. And, he'd always be inviting people to sit down, and have lunch. Please don't do it,
I'm
and
trying to work here. Yeah.
right. And people would always be like, oh, John's standoffish. He's this, he's that, he's cold. But it was business. I was working, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Had my game face on, I had my mentality going, and I didn't really want any outside interference or anybody asking me anything, not necessarily because I didn't want to tell them, just because I didn't, want to get taken out of my game, so to speak.
I think a lot of pros kind of just, as simulcasting became, and you could bet from your computer, as that changed, you were able to lock yourself in your war room and put your work cap on and just do your work. But then
Exactly.
that took you out of the social atmosphere, because that was always one of the best things about going to the racetrack was
Right. Yeah. And I
seeing
enjoyed
everybody,
being at
right?
the racetrack.
Yeah.
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 I enjoy it. I used to, I'm someone who used to go every day, and now I hardly go at all.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why, I like to, focus and get dialed in, and not really
It's
social.
hard to.
You know?
It's really hard when you're being, and people always say, well, should you drink when you're betting? No, absolutely not.
Oh, right.
Like it just like, oh,
Exactly.
if you have a beer, I mean, that big deal, right? You just didn't have but I mean, no, it's like you have to keep a clear head. You have to be able to make split-second decisions. The odds change.
100%.
It wasn't a good bet at 5-2. Now all of a sudden you're up to 3-1. Now it's a good bet. You got to be ready for those kind of things. So
Right.
yeah, it was hard for me when I was working, so I was at the racetrack for so long in a working capacity and being on camera and interviewing and everybody knows you because you're the
Right.
person on camera. So betting was almost non-existent because it was impossible to focus
Right.
in that kind of, that part of my job. It was just always, distractions and needing to talk to people because it's a guest experience. So you can't just like
Right.
trying to bet here. So yeah, while I was working, it was when I finally left that I was really able to focus on it. You need to focus. It's
Yeah,
so
no,
important.
you really do. And I started very, very young. My dad was a mutual clerk for NYRA,
Cool.
and he had gotten me a job as a mutual clerk for NYRA. Okay, but by then I was already very into betting.
Mm,
So they had a system where you used to shape up, and as they needed people, they would hire more people, like you would call it an extra. You follow me? So the
yeah.
union guys were guaranteed to work, but the extras weren't. And
Yeah.
I used to deliberately sign in late, so I was the last
It
one
goes
they
up to
would
work.
pick. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't have to work, so I could hang out and bet.
Nice.
And nobody could understand that, because if you work a certain amount of days, you get into the union and you become a regular. And that was
Right.
never important to me. I'd be like, I better bet. You know what I mean? I could win
Yeah.
more today than I could make in 3 months in being in that stupid union.
Exactly.
You know, and
Exactly.
nobody could ever understand that. And as far as the days that I worked, I was terrible because, and I was going to ask you how difficult it was when you were working in the paddock if you were betting, because when I was a clerk, I mean, I was a good clerk because I was fast and I knew how to bet, so I knew how to sell tickets, you know, fast. I could
Yeah.
take people fast. But a lot of times, if I decided to bet something when there was like 30 seconds to post, someone comes to my window, it's like, you gotta wait a minute, and I'm punching my own tickets, and they're like, come on, come on. I'm like, shh, hurry up, just be quiet. I'll get to you quicker if you shut up, you know, because I'm making my bets before they, you know. So I
That's
probably wasn't a very good
that's not very good.
clerk.
No, no, you weren't gonna get any employee of the week plaques
No,
for that
no,
attitude.
no. The strange thing about Naira back then is that the people that used to watch the clerks to make sure that we didn't bet were all betting.
We're all betting.
So
Yeah,
they kind of liked me because they would come over to me and say, John, give me a $2 double part wheel, this, that, because they knew I was okay because I was betting too, and I wasn't, you know, gonna like frown on them doing that. But I had the racing form thumbtacked open up above my window, which supposedly you weren't allowed to do. I can't work here if I don't do
you
that.
found your way.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. No, it was tough, and I would see, because I would consider myself probably one of the top at body language of horses, and I would see a horse,
right.
I'd be like, this is such a sure thing, and I either wouldn't have access or I would have something else distract me. I would just there would be, but I would always say, you know, if I was on air at that time, I would say I wouldn't hold any of that back. Like I really believed that sharing the wealth was an important part of what I did. So yeah, I wouldn't like see a horse and like, oh, I'm not telling anybody. It wasn't like that at all. You know, I did my work and I definitely shared as much as, you know, as I knew, I shared it on air.
Yeah. Something else we probably agree on. I have a feeling we both think replays is extremely
It's huge.
important. I think that, you know, you being an expert at a horse's body language, which I was never able to get as good at as I would have liked to be, and as I would still like to be. But I think that is something that often gets overlooked, and that simulcasting and ADWs don't really allow us to get a feel for. That's one of the things you lose not actually being at the racetrack. And I think a lot of people miss the point. And I'm curious if this is why you think it's so important. But you know, horses are athletes; they're equine athletes, and you know, I get the whole you can't judge a book by its cover thing. Okay, I get that. But a lot of times you could look at two fighters in the ring. Okay, when the referee is given you know the instructions, and just one of them outlooks the other. You know what I mean? Or the other guy just looks intimidated, and then or just. You know, it was like that when Mike Tyson was the champ. Everybody who he fought, they looked scared before the bell rang, you know, and most of them wound up getting knocked out. You know, sure, there's always those surprises and exceptions, you know, and I remember one horse, Shackelford, when he won the Prix. I thought he looked terrible in the paddock. He was washed out. He was nervous, looked like he ran it. I'm like, this horse has got no shot today whatsoever. And he wins, you know what I mean? So there's always, you know, those ones that'll fool you. But I think for the most part, being able to read the body language of a horse and seeing a horse that's feeling good, or just as important, seeing a horse that might not be feeling good, or a young horse that looks intimidated or scared, which is something I look at the 2-year-old races, at the baby races at Saratoga. I always felt that races that we have less information on, you know, 8 or 10 first-time starters give me an edge because of my experience. So one of the things I would look for is I would go into the paddock and look, and not so much look for, you know, because in Saratoga, most of them look great. They're expensive horses. They're trained by top outfits. And, you know, you've got a lot of really good looking specimens out there. But I used to try and find the ones that didn't look that good, or that looked intimidated or not ready or shy or green and whatnot. And you know, sometimes you find them that are from good connections and are a short price, and I could eliminate them, and that would be an edge. So when you look for body language, do you look for both positive and negative signs?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. To be able to eliminate especially horses that are taking money, to be able to eliminate those. I mean, that's what we're all trying to do, right? Is get those bigger prices by eliminating. And plus, with the computer players, they don't have access to that kind of information. Right. So that's like a huge edge.
I've done
That's what I miss
videos
the
on that.
most.
Yeah, no, I've done
Exactly.
videos on that. You know, how do you beat the computer players? By getting them into races that they don't have a statistical advantage over you, you know?
Yeah. I used to take notes on all the horses because I was doing it at Woodbine. So that's, to me, that's what I'm missing right now. And actually Woodbine's starting up in another week here. And because of the pandemic and everything, I haven't been actually at the track since I left there in 2019. Like it's going to be 3 years this year since I left. I know it's crazy. But yeah, but I'm going to start going because that part of my game, I mean, obviously I handicap too, but my final decisions are made on appearance and seeing the horses, walking ring to the track to right behind the gate. And then, because a lot can happen, horse can look, that's another thing too, horse can look great in the walking ring. Then something happens on the way to the track, or a pony person's a little rough with them or something, sets them off. Like you kind of have to keep an eye on them. It's a labor of love, but boy, can you uncover some. Now, the way that you like to play, obviously with pick sixes and stuff, it makes it tough because you can watch one race, but you have no idea what the other 5 races are doing,
exactly. But you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit too. I've evolved. There really is no more pick six. You know, the 20-cent thing and the 50-cent pick five has changed. I mean, the pick six to me is a 2-day wager now. Kentucky Derby Day on a $2 wager when the pool is big enough, and Breeders' Cup. And that's it. Those are the only 2 pick sixes I really go after now. It changed my whole way of approaching the game, you know. And you know, when the pick six pools started to dwindle and started to change, you still had the $2 pick four and no pick five. And I used to love the $2 pick four. But then they introduced the 50 cents, and then they added the 50-cent pick five, and it just, to me, diluted the pools. And you know, you have too many spread ticket, cowboy ticket winners in there, and you know, even though the pool is bigger, to me the prices are less, and it changed my whole approach. I've been forced to evolve to, you know, these kind of changes,
which is an important thing. I think, you know, and you just encapsulated the entire mindset of what it takes to be successful in this game. And I mean success year in and year out, where you're constantly in the black at the end of the season. You have to be able to adapt. And whether it's what pools you're betting into, your wager size, what you're focusing on, the watching replays, the taking notes, the trips, everything, you have to be able to adapt, because one thing this game constantly does is change. And what worked last year, there's absolutely zero guarantee. In fact, it probably won't work this year. Right? So you have to change. Yeah.
And that's another reason why, you know, I'm a one track, you know, one meet player. You know, I've focused on one meet at a time. Are you the same way, or are you able to do multiple meets?
Well, I've been, because of the way that I was always in the business. Like I was always a multiple meet focus person, but I can know a ton about 7 different meets. Right. I can know intimate training pattern knowledge, because that's just the way my mind works. Because I was a trainer for so long. Right. So I can look at a program. It takes me maybe a week of watching a circuit, a specific circuit, to be able to understand who's got a clue, who can ride, all those things. Because that's what I've done all my life. That was my living all my life. It doesn't take long to figure out, you know, because I always approach things as a trainer or an owner mindset. Like, why, the question I always ask, why is this horse in this race? Like, why? Okay, they're dropping. Why are they dropping? Here's a layoff horse. They're moving into a stake. That I always ask that question to myself, and I approach it from the mindset of having been a trainer and an owner too.
Right. Yeah. See, that's a good advantage. I was never able to master multiple tracks. See, I grew up and kind of made my way in the pre-simulcast days. So I was locked into one track and one meet primarily, you know, and so I just learned that way. And I do so much work. I mean, when I go to the races, I come prepared, and it's just, I'm methodical about it. So I don't have the time to do multiple racetracks. You know, I love Del Mar, but Del Mar is a frustrating meet for me because I focus so much on Saratoga. I just can't put in the work for Del Mar to bet confidently. So I'll fool with it a little bit, or I'll try to get in, like, you know, work on the last couple of races here or there once or twice a week. But I can't focus on that, meet the way that I've wanted to. And, getting to evolving, now it's gotten to the point where I like certain types of races and I gravitate to certain types of races. So I might not be dialed in on a meet right now. I may look through 4 or 5 tracks for the type of races I like and just attack those races. And I'm different better than most. Like how I might bet a race is, let's say it's a 10-horse field and I like number 5. Okay. I may bet the 5 to win, 5-2 exacta, and then triple 5 with 2 with 3-7-9. And that's it. You know what I mean? If the 5 runs second, I don't win. You know what I mean? If the 5 wins and the horse I have second doesn't come second, I don't win. I just hit the win bet. But when I do win, because I bet that way and I bet it multiple times, when I win and I'm right, it counts. And fortunately, I'm a good enough handicapper and a good enough picker of the right spots that I do it enough times to make it count and make it pay. But it's tough to do. The normal way, I think, human nature is you want to cash as many tickets as possible. So, you have people who say, oh, well, if you like the 5 and he's 10 to 1, wheel him. I'm like, no, I don't wheel. You know what I mean? I'm going to bet him to win, and I'm going to bet 5-2, and I'm going to bet it 100 times. Because if I'm right, I'm going to collect 50,000, whatever the case may be. If you're right, you're going to collect 600. I could lose a lot of them for that one that I win to kind of balance everything in my favor. So it's hard.
I like that mindset.
Embrace that.
Well, that's how I focus. Because, like I said, with the patience, like I look for my spots, and I have my certain spots, things that I enjoy, that I like to play too, that I focus on, that I hone in on, and I want to crush that race. I want to, when I have a good opinion, and I might look at, I have been, that's when I first started doing this professionally, when I was, decided to pick this up. I was looking at 40 races a day. Like I was looking at tracks I'd never even paid 2 seconds of looking at, like places like Delta Downs, which actually I ended up being pretty good at, right? I found my spots there. There were certain trainer angles there that I like, Ramirez. There were things that I was picking up on. I was playing Parks, and I was playing Thistledown, and all these tracks that I didn't even know where they were. I'd have to look them up to see what the weather was. I'm like, where's Thistledown? I've never even heard. So seriously, like, because to me, I was always like, where I was working, it was Northlands Park, it was Woodbine, it was all, that one meet, like you with Saratoga, you with Naira, you with whatever.
Right.
But I liked the smorgasbord because I did the same thing as you. I knew which spots. To me, it was a lot of trainer angles that I was picking up on, and I'd wait for those, and then I'd try to crush that race specifically. And I'd look at 40 races to maybe find the 1 or 2 that I really liked that day and try to kill those.
I've always equated finding a trainer angle that is very good before the masses do. As almost a gold mine. And I go back, I'll share a very interesting story with you that I find funny. Oscar Barrera, who you probably have heard of, was a legend in New York and used to win a ridiculous amount of races and was always accused of being a cheater. But before that happened, okay, he was a very low profile guy, okay? And one day, it was the last race at Aqueduct. I remember the horse's name. It was Alturas, okay? And a jockey named Jimmy Miranda was riding the horse. And I don't know, had to be the 80s, early 80s or something like that. And it was the last race on a cold, rainy winter Aqueduct day. And I walked through the little turnstile that leads from the grandstand into the clubhouse, and standing there was a friend of mine who owned a gas station named Jay, okay? And he was standing there under the awning so the rain wasn't hitting him, with a hoodie on, and he had this big smile on his face that just looked like odd, And I said, Jay, how are you? And he smiled, he goes, I'm okay. And it was about like 3-4 minutes to post, And you got to understand, since I'm a kid, I'm the type of veteran handicapper, I never listen to anybody. I don't care who it is. When I own horses, I never asked my trainer if he liked our horse. I told him if I liked our horse or his other horses, okay? If I meet or talk to a trainer, I'll tell them. I think trainers talking about horses are like people talking about their kids. They're never objective. They never analyze and handicap the race. But anyway, not to get off you, because I want this to be more about you, but this is just a funny story I think you'll like. So I'm like, hey, Jay, you know, and we say hello. And I'm like, what's with that big smile? I never seen your face. You look like the cat that ate the canary. He goes, I'm about to make a huge score. I'm like, what's up? He goes, all right, I'm going to tell you. He goes, but keep it between us. He goes, I've been doing this for about 4 years. Like, what is it? He goes, you see this guy, Oscar Barrera? I says, yeah. He goes, he only claims 2 or 3 horses a year. Every time he claims a horse and runs them back in a couple of days, they always win. I'm like, they do? He goes, always. I said, he's never lost. He goes, not when he runs back in 4 or 5 days. Never. I says, come on. He goes, I'm telling you, I've been watching him for years. They never lose. This horse will not lose. So I look at my form, and he had just claimed the horse last time out. It was 3 or 4 days before. The horse was 7-1 and looked like he had a chance. He had a little speed, but he looked like a quitter. There was other speed in the race. He really didn't look that good. It was a sloppy track. I was like, I don't know, Jay, there's other speed. It's sloppy. Never been. He goes, he will not lose. I says, you know what? I'm going to ride with you on the blind here, okay? Which I never do. And I went to the window and I bet 100 to win. And I went back and I watched the race. I'll be done if the horse didn't go take the lead on the outside by about a length and drew off, win by 5. Okay, easy win. Al Torres was the horse's name. Last race at Aqueduct. I don't remember the year. I'm going to look it up later if I have time. Wins off the screen. Okay, I'm like, wow, Jay's like, listen, this is a gold mine. He goes, a literal gold mine, and he was right. And it was about a year later, okay, that he somehow started claiming more horses, and ultimately people started catching on. And then every time he would claim a horse, no matter what the situation was, they would open up 4 to 5. There was still money in the bank. All right, there was still money in the bank. Then I says, you know what? I'm not gonna, you know, people used to curse him and hate him and, oh, I won't bet a race he's in. I used to bet everything I had. I'm not a favorite better, but I'd bet 5,000, 6,000 to win but that was a lot of money in the 80s, you know, on even money in 4 to 5 shots, because it was the easiest way to double your money. I'd be like, yeah, you laugh at me all day long. I just turned 6,000 into 12, you know what I mean? Or 11. I don't care, you know, they all won, you know, I mean, they all won. But that was the trainer angle that he kind of turned me on to long before you know, people knew. And now, you know, when I find those kind of angles, like that fly under the radar, like a certain trainer who's got a low percentage with first time starters, but his percentage goes up skyrocket when he works them a certain way or a certain number of days out. When you pick up on those kind of tells, for lack of a better term, they can be a tremendous edge.
Yeah, even in this day and age, because now obviously the stats that everyone gets to see, those things you used to have to mine is like Bitcoin. You had to mine that, right? You had to find those yourself. Now it's all there. It's like, here's, what does this trainer do? Wheeling them back in 1 to 7 days. Oh, it's there. Everybody can see. He wins 50% of the time, right? But there are intricacies, because there's like 2 or 3 moves that go together. You know, so if you actually start to notice those things, then yeah. Oh, there are edges in this game. You just have to pay attention and look for them, and you'll find them, you know, and you can make, I always say, you can make a living at this game. You have to have a bankroll, you have to be patient, you have to pay attention, and you've got to look for an edge. You can't bet every race and be successful. You can't. You don't have an edge in every race. You're crazy if you're betting every race.
100%. And I think that percentage we spoke about earlier, that liberal 5% that we said, okay, maybe, I think it's so low because so many people can't do it right, do what it takes, do a lot of the things that we're talking about, because a lot of them, I think, go against our normal nature of just wanting to cash as many tickets, wanting to use every horse you think has a shot, wanting to bet every race because the action is there and you're at the races where you're on your phone and you're watching TV and there's another race coming up. And, handicapping, money management, discipline, structuring your ticket are all requirements for success. I mean, if you just master one of those things, I don't care how good of a handicapper you are. If you don't know how to bet and don't have discipline, you're not going to win.
You're not going to win. If you can't manage your money, then you're not going to win. If you can't show some restraint, it's so true. It doesn't matter how good you are. And that's always the age-old argument. Like, would you rather be a good bettor and a bad handicapper, or a good handicapper and a bad bettor? I don't think you can separate the two, right? Like, if you're a bad handicapper, it doesn't matter how good of a bettor you are. Now you're just spraying, you're just shotgun, right? Now
Exactly
you're doing
right.
building those crazy tickets where you're investing $1,000 and hoping to win 200. Well, keep doing that for a while and see how long you last in this game. You're not going to last.
Listen, it'll turn a billionaire into a millionaire fast. I mean,
it's true. Yeah.
Nobody can last doing that.
No.
I try and tell people sometimes because because of the site, again, I have to be active on social media. So a lot of times, people will post tickets and, it's hard to argue with somebody who just won. But I'll tell them, I say, listen, the way you're betting, I get it, you won today. But in the long run, you're going to get annihilated. But I had this, I had that, and I could see by the way people post tickets, just by the way they structure their bets, that in the long run, they're not winners. You know what I mean?
They haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, I'd bet anything on it. I'm like,
some of them will. Some of them will figure it out. Like they'll because when you start to pay attention, you start to study, you can improve. It doesn't matter what you do in life. You pay attention and you put the work in, you can improve what you do. So if you're a winning player now and you're putting together stupid tickets, like, realize you're putting together stupid. First, you have to realize and admit that this could have been a lot smarter. Like, look at what you did and say, how could I have been more efficient here? I really like this horse. I should have, had my opinion, even if I'd lost that opinion with really liking a horse and really honing in on one and then building the ticket around that. And instead of picking like 5 or 6 horses, like, okay, I don't really know what I'm going to do in this race, so I'll just go with 6 of them. Well, think about it. So learn from your wins, learn more from your losses, but learn from your wins as well. Losses are the best teachers. Losses are the best. I'm glad you said that,
because one of the things I do when I win, okay, and even a big score, okay, the next day I'll sit down and I'll look at my wages and I'll say, okay, I won. And sometimes I win big, you know what I mean? It could be a big 10, 20, $50,000 day. It doesn't matter. Even I'll look and I say, okay, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? All right. I love this 8-to-1 shot that won, and I won 30,000. Could I have won 60,000 betting the same amount of money?
Should I have played the try? Should I have had a pick
what
three?
Did I do wrong? And let me tell you something. I almost always find a way that I could have done it better. You know what I mean? By my own rules, I mean, because I have certain ways that I bet and things that and I'm like, I could have done this better, I almost always find a way. And if you learn from that, and you take it away, in the future, it's going to pay off, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree. If you're not learning something new every day in this game, I don't care if you've been betting for 50 years, 80 years, 10 years, then you're not improving your game. Like there's so much to learn, you'll never learn it all.
That's true, and it's always changing. When you decided to become when you decided to leave, the booth at Woodbine, or the paddock at Woodbine, and become full scale professional, were you nervous about it at all? Were you apprehensive, or were you confident?
Well, it's funny because it was kind of a meandering path. When I left Woodbine, like, everybody thought I was crazy because it was an ideal job. Like, it was.
I didn't think you were crazy. When I remember reading that you were leaving and going to be a professional, and I was like, I didn't think crazy. I thought gutsy. That was the word that came.
I needed a change of scene, and I 100% always have faith in myself. Whatever I do, it always works out. It always works out. You know, I'd been doing it a long time. I needed a break from being the on-air person, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but it's a lot of, you know, like you're on all the time. You know, people
Right.
recognize you. You have to conduct yourself in a certain way. You have to look a certain way. You have to, you know, so it's like you're an actor every day. So that
Right.
became a little bit. I just needed a break.
Right.
I'd been doing some holistic health stuff. So I just want to, like, I stepped away from the horses for about a year. And well, and
Right.
then the pandemic hit, which made it tough. So the holistic health stuff wasn't really going anywhere because of the pandemic. So I thought, well, what do I want to do now? And it was like, well, what can I do? Well, I'm really good at one thing, and that's betting horses. That's picking
Right.
horses. That's what I'm good at. So that's kind of how I decided. It wasn't like a decision I'm going, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, this is what I'm good at. So here we go. And jumped in with both feet. And obviously I've been doing it for so long, you know, I had what I needed as the tools,
Right.
the patience, the ability to just sit back and not make a bet. So I had all that going for me already. But yeah, it's not easy. Like, if anybody thinks it's easy, you're crazy. You're
No.
crazy, because
Yeah,
stuff
no.
happens. You know, you can have the greatest opinion, you could put together the best bet in the world, and then I can't tell you, I had one week where I swear 3 jockeys on horses that I bet, they were cruising to easy wins. All 3 of them hit their horses, and the horses ducked out and the guys fell off. It was like one of the, I'm like, oh my
Oh,
God, you're winning by 10, right? And yet you hit your horse, and now I want to come and hit you. Cause like, just don't do
it's
it.
so funny how this game, you know, I had one of those days, I don't know, it was the last weekend or the weekend before. I get mumble jumbled now in my head, but I just couldn't get a good trip no matter what.
Yeah,
Every
it
horse that
happens.
I bet, who got left, who's trapped on it. And it got to the point where by like this third or fourth bet that I made that day, I was like, it's happening again. It just,
Yeah.
today, I'm not going to win today. I'm done for the day. I'm just going to watch the rest of the races because it
Yeah.
is just not going my
You
way.
have to laugh. You have to laugh at it, because that happens. It's just
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's the mojo in the air. I don't know. It just is what it is.
Right.
But to be
You
able to
know,
just step back and say, okay,
right.
this just isn't my day.
And the other thing that I'll do is the reverse is, you know, if I'm hot and things are clicking, I'm
Yeah,
not afraid to really go
you
after
have
something
to.
and say, you know
Yeah,
what, I'm taking my shot, you know,
yeah. Yeah,
win, lose or
like
draw.
you're winning those photos where, you know, you're watching the bob, and you know
Right,
it was either way, and you think you
right.
lost and you win those. Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. It's the roller coaster. When stuff's clicking, it clicks. When it isn't, you learn from it and you move on. You know, it's just, you get things where you handicapped it, you got a speed horse, you get a good price on it, and now the 61 shot's going to run you, who's never shown speed in its life, and you're now at the quarter and 21-4, and you want to jump off the building. You know,
Right.
like these things happen, but it hopefully evens out, because now maybe you're on the closer that's sitting just behind. You're like, oh, thank God this horse didn't get loose, because I
Right.
was doomed if he did. So yeah,
Uh,
you got to ride the
Fun
roll.
question. Are you a rooter? Do you root?
It depends where I am. If
Okay.
I so a lot of my, obviously the last while, it's been, you know, here on the good old
Right.
handicapping coach. It depends. Like, when I'm in public, no, because I think that's rude. I used to
Okay.
hate when I'd have a big bet on, and there's the guy Rudy Andy Beyer was that wrote the best stories. Andy Beyer's books are the best, about
Uh,
how he'd have a bet that's paying like 30 grand, and the guy
right.
beside him's got a $5 show ticket, and he's rooting
And
his
he's
horse on, and you just want to like strangle him, right?
right.
So yeah, no, I'm when I'm out and there's other people betting, no, I would never root.
I'm not really a rooter, you know.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'll do it at home if it's a big race for
that's yeah.
fun, or if
Yeah.
I'm at the races for fun. I did root for Birdstone and Smarty Jones because I was alive in the pick six, and I was sitting at a table with my dad and my brother, and they
Yeah.
were all telling me a million reasons why I shouldn't use Birdstone. So I was screaming, "Get him, Edgar! Get him, Edgar! Get him!" But
That's
normally I don't
different. Yeah.
root, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I always would say, and a lot of my friends would say, you know, John could be alive for 100,000 on a head
You wouldn't
bob,
know.
and next to
Yeah.
me, you wouldn't know it. And my
Yeah.
good friend one day says, "That's not true." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "No," he goes, "You have it tell." He goes, "I know when you're alive for big money." I'm like, "That's not possible." I mean, I stand there, I don't bat an eyelash, win, lose, or draw. He goes, "No," he goes, "You do." He goes, "You lean." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, I'm telling you, he goes, I'm
Lean.
20 years, I'm going to the
Yeah.
track with you. He goes, it's
Yeah.
not a big lean. Most people wouldn't notice it. But when you're alive for big money, not small money,
Yeah.
but when you're alive for
It's
big
the
money,
old-
you lean. I'm like, get out of here.
they're getting to the
So
wire and you're kind of
I
going.
started paying attention to it. He's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I lean. I'm
It's
like,
not classy to be a big rooter in
yeah,
it's
I
just
told him, I
not.
said, I will never play poker with you ever, no matter
Yeah, no
what
kidding.
happens.
No
I'm
kidding.
not playing poker with that guy because I didn't realize it until he pointed it out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, it can be annoying when you're alive for a nice hit and somebody's rooting against you. It can be a little bit, I mean, it's part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's exactly. It's part of the game. It all comes out in the wash at the end of it. That's the thing. You got to be able to, if everything's banking on it, there's the old saying, and I always thought it was the reverse. It's like you can beat a race, but you can't beat the races. I always thought, to me, it's the opposite. It's like
Right.
you can't beat a race all the time, but you can beat the races because stuff's
Right.
going to even out, right? I mean, you
Exactly.
can have the easiest, the most simple mortal lock in the world. And like we said, your jockey falls off.
Right.
Or, your horse stumbles and the jockey loses the pedals. Like, stuff happens in every single race, something happens. But over the course of the year, those things should even out.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like one of the things that irked me that a lot of the on-air personalities will say is, oh, this horse looks like a free square. I'm like, I've been doing this a long time. There's no such thing as a free square. You know what I mean? Exactly.
And those are the races. When I hear that, that's the race I want to look at, because I'm going to find a reason that horse is going to
exactly.
I'm going to bet against them.
And I'm also convinced that people that say that and think that on-air analysts, which is one of my quirks against a lot of them, is I think they should be bettors. And I think if you say it's a horse is a free square, you're probably not a better.
Yeah, that's.
You may be
I have
giving
my
selections and picks, but you're probably not betting on them.
Yeah, I have my own feeling. I think there are very, very few who I would actually go out of my way to listen to. I could name maybe 3.
Right.
Maybe I'm not going to name them, but I could name probably 3 that I actually respect and would listen to their opinion. The rest, no.
Right. I would probably agree with you that there's maybe 2 or 3 that I think have a decent opinion, but me again, I don't like to know anybody's opinion. That's just how I am, I don't want to hear the stories. I don't want to hear the hype. I don't care who anybody else likes. Like they talk to a trainer. Does he like his horse? I don't want to know. I don't care. I'm sure he likes his horse. You know what I mean?
They used to make us do that.
They all like their horse.
Well, that's the thing. Like they used to want, they like, because they think it adds to the broadcast, right? So they'd be like, you have to go talk to the trainers before the race. I'm like, but I was a trainer. You know what they're telling you? It's like they either don't know because they don't know the other horses, what they're running against, or they're giving you the bull story, right? Like you're not getting the real story. They're flat out lying to you, a lot of them. So yeah, it was useless.
I'll tell you one thing that you may find interesting that I'll share with you that was just a personal observation of mine. I've gotten friendly over the years with a lot of riders, okay? And some of the riders that ride in Europe that I've spoken to. And I was very surprised at the European riders that ride like in the UK regularly. Ryan Moore, I'll give you an example.
He's awesome.
How much knowledge they have, not only about their horse,
everyone else,
but about all the other horses as well. I mean, I remember once I was at the Breeders' Cup a couple of years ago in Kentucky, and I was staying at the same hotel that Ryan Moore was at, and we got into a conversation about some of the races. And I was like, this guy, I was amazed at not only how much he knew about the horses he was riding, but about all the other horses in the race, including the American horses. Yeah, I was like, wow, this guy is
he does his homework. He's
on the win, lose, or draw. This guy knows what's happening, who to beat, how to beat him, and I was just really in awe.
He's one of my favorite interviews. Yeah, he's just like one of the smartest. He's like there's nothing really engaging about him as an interview, but man, he is quick as a whip. He will listen to your question and he will answer it like exactly what you asked. He will answer. He won't give you more. He won't give you less. He was great. That's my jobs. Man, I got to talk to some cool people. Like the American jockeys are so class. Like guys like Johnny Velasquez, Edgar Prado used to come out once in a while. They're just such classy individuals. So much fun to talk to.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of them, you know, like even like guys like Javier Castellano was always such a jump. And then the Europeans, like you talk about, you know, you get the Rhine Moors that come over and
Right. But what
the
amazed me was just their
Poissons and
knowledge. They were just
yeah,
so well versed about, the whole field,
everything.
not just their own horses, I mean, I've
Yeah.
spoken to American riders and, not to disparage any of them at all, but they didn't have a clue. I'm not sure that they looked at the form. They know, I think my horse has some speed, and that's about all they do. And I was like, wow, these guys really, really know their stuff. They come
They,
prepared.
you know, and that's a function of the American trainers too, though, because a lot of them want to tell their jockeys how to ride. A lot of them do. Like this, I want you in front. I don't want you in front. I'll pull you off if you are anywhere near the front. Like they want. So a lot of the jockeys will just kind of go into it with a blank canvas. There's a few, like Chad Brown's pretty good about just saying, you know, break and whatever, where you are is where you are, right? Like,
Right.
but there's a lot of trainers who, whether it's an egotistical thing, American thing, like I'm the trainer, I want you to ride my horse this way. So I think a lot of
Right.
jockeys kind of defer in that, because they know if they don't do it, they're getting yanked. You know, it's pretty simple.
Being a former trainer and now being a professional handicapper, how important to you is both trainer and rider when you're making a bet?
Uh, well, yeah.
See,
The answer is
to me,
yes.
to me, it's extremely important, and a lot of
It's
people
huge.
argue that with me,
No,
especially
it's
the
huge.
rider. A lot of people will tell me, "Oh, the rider doesn't matter." I disagree. There are certain riders I will bet
100%.
on confidently, and I could love a horse, and certain riders are on that horse, and I'm like,
I won't bet it. Yeah.
I can't ride with him. You know what I
You know
mean?
where
Or
I make a lot, one of my pet plays, I've got a few, but one very specific one, and this can be, you know, take very little handicapping, which is kind of handy sometimes. I can look at races and I just look to see who rode and who's off. Right.
right,
Like you know who the top 5, 6 guys are. That isn't tough to figure out. And you see, well, this guy rode last time. Now I've got, you know, this other guy on. And that's a bet right there. It's like it
right,
tells a trainer intention. The horse is good right now. I'm calling the agent of this guy because I don't want the rider screwing up my horse. He's ready to win today. So
right,
that can work against you too. You have to be careful because sometimes guys that are dropping the horse down because they want to get rid of it. There's the
right,
old, this horse is for sale. They'll put
right.
a jockey on because they just want, you know, everything to, and the horse is not good. Like he's not
Right.
right. So
Yeah,
yeah, it
no,
can go both ways.
100%. I remember there was an old time trainer that was really, really sharp that way. And, I picked up on one of those tells with him where, when he would drop a horse that he wanted to get claimed, the
Yeah.
horse would look like $1,000,000. You know what I mean? Be all dappled, not a bandage on him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
3 to
Dry as
5.
bone. And
Yeah.
right, exactly. And then when there was one that he was dropping because he wanted to win, he was a claiming trainer.
Yeah.
I would notice he would be in the stall in the paddock and they'd be hosing the horse down, sponging him so he looked like he was washed out,
Wet.
soft and wet, front wraps, rear wraps, every
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
wrap you could have. The tongue tie didn't look right, nothing looked right. The horse would come, and I'd be like, that's the one he likes, 6-1.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that would win,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
So
like, this
that's an
guy is
edge right
sharp
there.
and he's a better.
Yeah, the old, you know, in for a claiming tag first time and all of a sudden the horse has got wraps on. Well, that's because you don't get a free look, right? Like
Right.
that's a level of protectionism they don't necessarily want. That's where I do extremely well. I love finding false favorites, like favorites that you look
Right.
at and go, this horse has, I mean, he might win. They're gonna beat you, right? I mean, they're gonna
I'm
win.
right, of course.
They're going to win way less than they should when they're going
Right.
off 4 to 5 even odds. They're not winning at those kind of at that kind of a rate, and you bet against those often enough, and you can make your living just doing that, finding and betting against false favorites if you can come up with a decent enough opinion of what, like, who's left.
One of the things I will defer to you on, and in your expert opinion, because I've never really liked any answer I've ever gotten to any other person I've asked that used this term. And that's not that I've ever heard you use this term, but a lot of analysts do use it. They'll be looking at the horses in the paddock and it'll be a maiden special weight or a maiden claim or whatever, but usually a maiden race or a first time. And they'll say, oh, that horse has a turf foot or a turf hoof. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a horseman. What exactly? I mean, I could tell if a horse is bred for the grass,
Yeah.
but I certainly don't know what a turf hoof or a turf foot is. One person I asked who always used to say, said, "Oh, it means they got a small little hoof. It's a turf hoof or a turf foot." what do you consider that? And do you ever use that term?
Yeah, being at, no, I definitely have. I have, but to me, it's something very specific that I look for. There's been enough good European horses that have come over to Woodbine, because when we had Canadian International, they would ship
Right.
over, and these are like, when they come, you don't even look at the North American horses. You just pick the Euros because they're on turf. They're just so far superior. They look different. Their entire bodies are shaped differently, and they do have a specific turf foot. To me, it's more like it's like a flatter, like a dinner plate, like not the cuppy Shelly. It's more of a dinner plate. But yeah, definitely, you can, with babies and stuff, it can help to look at them. It doesn't always mean 100%. Yeah, the horse might have a great turf hoof and be slow.
Right.
It doesn't mean he's going to be
You still gotta be
fast,
fast.
right? Yeah,
Right,
he's
yeah,
still going to
right.
be fast. So it doesn't matter how good the foot looks. Like that can be totally irrelevant if the rest of the horse is put together. He's got one leg pointing out this way, but damn, that's a nice foot on him,
Right.
So it's the whole picture. I always try, if you want to start to learn body language, is go and look at what good horses look like.
Right.
When there's a stake race, like get down to the paddock and look and say, okay, this horse has won $2 million. There's got to be something there and start to learn
Right.
what good
No,
horses
I
look like,
I do
how
that.
they carry
Yeah.
themselves. It's all of it. It's the whole package. That's what I
Right.
like looking for, the whole package, how they're put together, how they carry themselves. They just have an air about them that,
Yeah, that's
they
like,
look good.
yeah, like when we spoke earlier, that's carrying themselves. That's a good way to put it. That's
It's
one of the
huge.
things I look for, is how they carry themselves. Because I look at it like a fight. You know what I mean? Like an athletic competition. You want to see that confidence. You want to see that air, swagger, whatever you want to call it. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I was actually thinking I might put a little course together, just go and do some filming and show people stuff to look, because there's little tells, like you can, I have it down to where I've seen so many, I mean, we all have, right? But so many post braids that I can watch a post braid and give you the top 3 contenders. And I don't care what their odds are. I don't even know what their odds are when I'm picking them, but it's things they do. It's are they putting their heads over the pony horse? Are they prancing? Are they flat foot walking? Is their head like up? Is it down? Are they looking around? Those little things. And you can, it's amazing how you can find just those couple of tells with horses. It's very consistent. They're very expressive animals. They're very intelligent, very expressive, and they'll let you know how they're feeling. And you can watch a post parade and you can get a good idea. Getting to see each horse on the camera for like 5-6 seconds, you can have a pretty good idea if the horse you like on paper is the same horse on the track, because they aren't always that day.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've taken too much of your time. I'm going to end with this question.
Okay.
If somebody was watching this show and was a recreational player, or wanted to really improve their game, or wanted to take it to the next level and try and become a pro, what advice would you give them as the most important thing you can tell somebody who was thinking of making that leap or wanted to try it and said, hey, you've been successful at it, well, what is it I need to do?
I would say sit and don't make a bet for like a good month and start to learn the game. Watch every race. Before the race, look at it as if you were going to place a bet. Look at different things that you think are important. Remember why you thought that was important. After the race is over, go back and figure out why you were right, why you were wrong. Like, do the work that as a pro we do, right? That we do the work. You watch the replays. You get to know who has a clue on the particular track that you're following or circuit you're following. You start to look for those trainer signs. You analyze and learn from everything. Learn from favorites that win, learn from favorites that lose, learn from long shots that win, learn all facets of the game. I would say just arm yourself with as much knowledge as you can possibly have, and continue to learn. And then as you start to make bets, have a little bankroll, learn how to manage your money, because that's a huge part of it too. So it's everything we've talked about today. Find what you're good at, because we can't all be good at everything. There's just too much. You find your niche. Find your niche and get really good at that niche. Maybe it's just betting sprints on dirt. Right. Maybe you're good at finding lone speed. Try to focus on that. If you can find 2 lone speeds a day, you could probably make money. Yeah, if you're good at it. So yeah, I'd be really specific at first.
Right.
For sure.
And we could end on this note, getting back to that 5%, I think if people did what you just said and said, you know what, this is what I'm good at, this is where I win, and I'm only going to do that, that 5% number would increase significantly.
Yeah.
But most people just don't have it in them to do that.
Yeah, no, it's true. And double down, on the things you're good at, double down. If you want action, have action, bet $2, bet $5, get $20, whatever.
Right.
But really focus on, know before you go to the track which races you want to kill. And it might be one. It probably should be one. If it's 5 out of 10, you're not being specific
right,
enough.
Exactly.
Not specific enough.
100%. Right. Yeah, you need to narrow that down.
Yeah.
Dawn Lupul, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I know I took a lot of your time, but I think it was an interesting conversation. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I think it's good for people to hear a lot of this stuff. It's a tough life, but it's a lot of fun. It's the game we love. And, what I would always say is that, yeah, it is tough, a lot of sacrifices, but you get to do something you love, and a lot of people can't say that, so
yeah, there's not a morning that comes where I can't wait to jump out of bed and get into into the handicapping. I love it. Yeah.
And there's something to be said for that. I'll stop the recording, then we'll say goodbye off camera, and I will let you go, I promise.
All right. Thanks, John. That was fun.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Nobody does it better.